Now it is time for us to move ahead to our next conversation as we talk about cloud and API-led banking, the role of cloud adoption, open banking APIs, and digital rails. As the financial services evolve, cloud infrastructure and open APIs are becoming the backbone of scalable, interoperable, and innovation-led banking. Open banking, we believe, is no longer optional. It is foundational to collaboration between banks, fintechs, regulators, and digital platforms. First off, as our moderator, allow us an opportunity to invite on stage the advisor World Bank, Chair or Payments of IFF, the former COO Digital of HSBC. He's somebody who's a globally recognized fintech and an open banking leader with over 2 decades plus of experience in digital financial transformation. He's held senior leadership roles at HSBC, Visa, and Maersk, to name a few, driving payments modernization and AI-led innovation. As advisor to the global financial inclusion platforms, including G20, GPFI, he's somebody who contributes to the policy frameworks. Let's please welcome Dr. Ritesh Jain. Let's give him a warm round of applause. Always such a pleasure, Dr. Ritesh, having you on board. Thank you so much for joining in. We also have the founder and CEO of mouthshut.com, Mr. Faisal Farooqi, who is here amongst us. Faisal is a pioneering digital entrepreneur and founder of one of India's earliest consumer review platforms. He's also the co-founder of Sogelytics and K12 Insight, focusing on analytics and education technology. Do we have do we have him amongst us? Yes, oh, right there. Apologies. Of course, I know Faisal from years back when Mouthshut was brewing in, and of course, one of the best in the industry right now. Let's give him a big round of applause. A noted public speaker actively contributing to the conversations on digital governance, entrepreneurship, and public policy transformation. We also have Nipa Datta, who's an international banker, former CEO of India FinTech Forum, somebody who's an accomplished global banking leader with experience across US, UK, and Singapore. Also serves in senior roles including COO and CAO, leading digital transformation, regulatory governance, and data strategy initiatives. She's recognized for scaling global capability centers, the GCCs, and driving operational excellence in global banking institutions. Please let's warmly welcome Nipa Datta. And we also have another leader who's been very gracious in accepting to be a part of our panel today. We have Sean Mugawell Panaliven, who's the founder and director and CEO of NCS Soft Solutions, a leading technology solutions provider in the financial services space. Brings in more than 2 decades of industry experience, and he's a seasoned techno-functional expert known for delivering innovative and scalable banking solutions. He conceptualized and built the audit platform called Ethic, which powers the core audit systems of nearly 90% of Indian banks. Please join me in welcoming on stage Sean Mugawell. Let's give him a warm round of applause. Well, the applause has to be louder than my talk, so I'm sure, because we've got such great leaders to continue that. And thank you so much to each and every one of them for joining in. I'd now like to leave it in the able hands of Dr. Ritesh Jain to take it forward.
So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, as always. And I've got a stellar panel that I would say, and a representation of the global markets as well. So Nipa is over here. She has worked in the different markets globally in the banking and the leading banks. We've got Faisal, who knows about the data and the reviews pretty well, and consent, definitely. And Sean Mugawell, who comes from the security background and leading GRC platform. So the topic is, it's pretty interesting and very close to my heart as well, because I've been leading open banking in global market from day zero, and that's where we started first time in 2014 when the first meeting in the Competitive Market Authority in the UK And that's where the foundation of open banking or the word have been coined. So I've been very fortunate. Now, what India did in last decade versus what the global market did. In the global market, everybody was talking about the fintech transformation and the digitization of banking. However, what India did, quietly built the DPI, the digital public infrastructure, as we all know, and much have been talked about, so I'll not bore you with that. But basically what happened, today we stand at around 21 billion transactions a month. So we built the platform at a scale. We just did not digitize banking. What we did, we digitized trust at a scale in the country. And that's what happened in India. And that's why India is a cusp where if the things are taken right, can lead the world in the global market from the banking and financial services perspective. Now let's talk about the next stage, and that's what the topic today, it's a cloud. So cloud adoption, that's what we are seeing in the last decade and a half in the global markets versus India as well. But is it really a technology that we are talking about? No, it's existential requirement. That's what it is today. And we are going to talk about the APIs as well. So APIs are no longer the interconnector for the systems. They are basically bridging the finance and bridging the gap in the digital economy. So I'll directly divulge into the questions over here, and I'll keep it pretty free flow. So when we talk about the open banking, what does it really mean in terms of, we have heard this in the different market, right? UK, regulatory driven. We talk about Singapore, it's more about the regulation compliances. US, not so much because of the market driven. India is building up infrastructure very differently. So Nipa, I'm coming directly to you. What do you mean by open banking? And just elaborate in terms of from the infrastructure perspective as well as the APIs.
Sure, thank you for that, and thanks for the introduction. So I will actually come from two different angles, and it might be a little different from what we are used to listening to about open banking. I'll start off with an anecdote with one of the international banks, and I'll kind of converge into how open banking is sometimes regulatory driven, but actually it leads us to innovation. So I'll kind of start off with that. So as per the regulatory requirements for RBI, all our data needs to be localized in India. And that when this regulation came up, this became a very big headache for all the international banks, and I've worked in multiples. So with one of these, the data had to be migrated. They were sitting in multiple data warehouses across different countries, and the only solution was a cloud. I mean, we had to go with the cloud provider, and we had to kind of select the best one that suited us. And after a lot of discussions, analysis, finally the process was completed as per the RBI regulations were required. And obviously we were going against a deadline to complete the whole migration for data. What we didn't realize in the process that opened up our whole market, because what we had was different businesses having their different isolated data sitting across different countries, and not only countries divided by businesses, divided by countries, but at some point of time, we had all our India data across all businesses in our cloud platform. And only restriction that RBI had was that customer data for India needs to be in India. We don't want any other countries, but we don't need anything to be restricted as per businesses. So that actually opened up open banking for us, and this was years before when the actual open banking that we see today in India across the different businesses beyond banking came up. So for me, that was the kind of the aha moment where it was a regulation that drove innovation, and that actually opened up a bank to cross-sell across different businesses, across different different customers, and that is the essence. Obviously, now we are more conscious about segregation and consent and what data can be used for what businesses, but that actually opened up the whole open banking, when we could get data across, customer data across different layers and have it in one consolidated cloud environment, and then we can, cut and slice and then, open up for different businesses. So that's the banking perspective.
Thank you, Nipa. What's really interesting about the open banking is historically we all know that we have this mindset from the banking perspective, so don't take it otherwise, no NGO or anybody else. But for banks have this mindset that we own the customer data, right? And that's what changed with the open banking. Now, first of all, I would come back to you in terms of you're coming from the customer reviews, consent, data, which you understand pretty well. So what has changed with the open banking in terms of the customer data, as well as what are the challenges that it has in the worldwide in terms of the open market?
Dr. Jain, I will specifically answer to you in a moment, but first of all, I think we all recognize the elephant in the room is that we have to address the AI issue, but this is not the scope of our topic today. We will ignore it, we will ignore it with reality. Ghalib, the famous Urdu poet, about 200 years ago, so he was, I think, one of the greatest poets, Urdu poets ever born. And he had a bad voice. He was very fond of drinking. So his fellow contemporaries at that time used to say, Ghalib, ye kya karte rehte ho? Tum hamesha jab bhi dekho sharab peete rehte ho. So, as Muslims, we believe that if you drink alcohol, then you will not go to Jannat. And Jannat is this paradise that everybody has been looking forward to, etc. in most religion. So Ghalib one day got frustrated. He said, Jannat ki haqiqat to sabko malum hai. Lekin, and then he picked up the wine glass. He said, Jannat ki haqiqat to sabko malum hai, lekin khush rehne ke, dil ko khush rakhne ke aur bhi bahane hain. So let me enjoy it. I think we all know that reality that's going to hit us with AI, whether it's banking, open banking, data, consent, API, etc. Now, to specifically answer your question, I think one of the fundamental changes that have happened with the government of India pushing and a lot of steps, micro steps that have happened in the last 1 decade is the recognition that people own their data. And that's why we have the Personal Digital Privacy and Data Protection Bill that came out 2 years ago, which became a law about a year ago. And I think hats off to the people behind it in the government as well as in the policy making that as a result of that, Dr. Jain, it is now universally acknowledged, at least in our country, that the customer owns their data. ये मेरा आधार नंबर है, ये मेरे ट्रांजैक्शन हैं, ये मेरे सिबिल स्कोर हैं, ये मेरे इस तरह के हैं. As a result of that, we are building the DPI and we are populating those databases with consent. Without my consent, you cannot pick up my Aadhaar. I mean, Aadhaar in its original form was very rudimentary. आपका कार्ड अगर आधार कार्ड गिर गया, किसी ने Xerox कर लिया, कार्ड नंबर डाल दिया, it was very dangerous. But with all these evolution that have happened and the consent that has happened, eKYC that has happened, virtual Aadhaar that has happened, so customers are feeling more empowered. Now in the earlier days, and now earlier days in technology means 5 years ago, 6 years ago, not 25 years ago. So in the olden days in technology, we used to do data scraping. I come from the startup industry where we sleep, we come up with some concept in the morning, we show some prototypes. So we do a lot of what is called hacking, not the crude word hacking, but we got to build it. So हम लोग screen scrap करते थे. We should just pull the data here, there. Then later somebody came up with all these API connectors and says legitimate framework बनाओ उसको. So with DPI coming and consent coming, the open banking concept is becoming more recognized now. Now it's not just about one app or one cred or something where I can just see all my expenses based on all my cards and I can connect all my cards or I can connect BillDesk with all my. I think now we are actually using those transactions, microcosms of those transactions to define who I am and then enable the banks to do shopping, virtual shopping. And how many of you have heard of this company called Bajaj Finance? Yeah? Ever got a call from them? So Bajaj Finance, they are the market leaders in calling you for home loans, this, that. I was listening to their CTO's podcast. They have put AI on 125,000 calls, and they have built huge number of products now. They are saying that that is only 10% of their calls. So you can imagine how many calls they do every month, okay? So Bajaj Finance is now using consent data with analytics, using AI at the speed of cloud computing, which means, you don't have to like pull the data from one particular source, but you can pull it from multiple sources, and they can customize the loan packages for almost everybody, which means it's not just one product that they're selling. They can sell 20,000, 40,000, 50,000 products at a time. And I think that is the benefit of analytics and consent and data.
Thank you, Faisal. Very beautifully defined and explained. Thank you. And I especially love the Ghalib. So coming back to you, Shanmugul, you come from the security background, and the biggest challenge that we have seen in the financial industry, earlier we had only single custodian, that was bank, right? And now with the open banking and the open data, we are talking about the third-party providers can access the customer data to provide the better services to the customer. It means the digital service has grown exponentially, and the data custodians has grown exponentially as well. So what are the challenges that you see for the financial institution as well as from the customer perspective, that how to manage these security aspects of the data which are scattered all over the places?
Yeah, thank you. See, as touched by the Nina, so he touched the innovation, and he touched about the collaboration. So the challenge is always there from the banking, you can go for the back to two decade or 3 decade ago. There is a challenge. The challenge is always there is no challenge-free life. Okay. Now the technology, the transformation is happening every decade now. So you can see that now the automation, now the digitalization, now the AI playing is a role. So the transformation is happening, whether you can like it or not like it, you have to adapt the technology. But once you move to while the transformation is happening and move to one technology to other technology, there is always a security threat. So that you cannot avoid. How we can reduce the threat is, suppose you have to move to the technology. Suppose you have the technology only going to be playing a role. So you have to you set the process in the efficient way. Then you have to innovate. The innovation is happening in all the places. So there is in the security aspect also, there's innovation is happening. So the technology only is going to play. How? So he said the collaboration right now, that the many product is, suppose the collaboration is happening very soon. Suppose I can, so the Bajaj Finance, suppose even I am getting the call, everybody is getting the call, Bajaj, suppose you cannot avoid that. But you have to set the each and every process using the technology and the sustainability. So the technology and the sustainability is going to play very role in the security aspects. So then only you can able to handle the large volume of data, and now the customer is not the bank only, not only the custodian of the data. So there are each and every player have the own responsibility and accountability to have the data. So my request is, the technology is going to play a very role in the security aspect.
Thank you, Shanmugul. Now when it comes down to the clouds and APIs, and obviously that opens up to the open banking, but we always talk about, it starts from the data. And the biggest challenge in the industry that I see, if I pick up any bank for that matter, and I always say this in the global market and the different forums as a bet, that I'm okay to put the bet even if they are using the 80% of their data, because I know that they are not even using the 40% of their data. So I'm on a safer side, right? So the biggest challenge comes from the fundamental, that is the data lineage. That is the foundation layer. And then everything else comes on the top of it. Now, when we are moving from the data to the open banking, which is still in the early stage, and open banking is just a stepping stone for the future, that is the open finance. Right? what are the things that banks should be careful of from the technology perspective to get the right sequencing? So what do you think, Nipa? What should be the right sequencing for the financial institution to be ready for the future from the data perspective and for the open finance?
Yeah, it's kind of a chicken or the egg question because at one part there is the whole infrastructure. So, for me, I would still think, the way India has built up the DPI infrastructure, bank needs to get their game up on the infrastructure side because there's been a lot of transformation, digital transformation, data governance, data management. There's been regulations passed like, BCBS 239 and different Basel forms where data scrubbing, data cleaning has been there, and there is a it's not quite there, but a lot of progress has been done from where we used to have, the same data appearing in different formats. So at least for most of the banks, we can identify a unique customer, across the different businesses. But what I think still lacking is the infrastructure to build up the resilience. I think that's one of the points that the last speaker in the last panel mentioned, is the infrastructure to build up the resilience. So that's one part of it, that's one end of it. The data sourcing of how we are getting the data from the third party, how we are kind of transferring the data, that needs to be under a very strict governance because sometimes it is done on an ad hoc or a regulatory requirement basis, but that needs to come in as a very strict governance. And we do have the DPDP framework that will get implemented, and we will have the consent consent part addressed to, but data is much more than consent, right? So that's when we will would need each and every customer data or any relevant data to clearly have the whole, you mentioned the word lineage, and it is the tracking and the flow from where the source is and how it is getting processed and to what would be the output. So once the infrastructure is there, at the same time, if we start mapping all the data to the source, to the customer output, I think that would be the second big step. It's not a second step, it's a parallel step. And the third is, which sometimes we miss out in our conversations, is in customer training and users' knowledge. Because as we kind of discussed that banks don't own the data, the third parties don't own the data. The same data is used by multiple organizations, but ultimately it's the customer who owns the data. But how do the customers really understand? So I think it is important that banks are mandated to put up these programs for end customers, to put up these trainings, and customers actually know what they are signing off on, what is a positive affirmation, that banks cannot take things just for granted. If you have applied for savings account, you cannot be automatically given a loan. So all these trainings, especially from the elderly and people who are not quite savvy on the digital, that needs to be part. So for me, these three are the key areas that should be coming in.
Thank you, Nipa. So what I understand majorly when you're talking mainly from the India perspective, because when it comes down to the global market, the maturity is there, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you just a bit of a gist. Like while I was leading one of the largest bank in the world, that is HSBC, my tech budget of my own was around 6 billion a year, right? And every year out of my own interest, I get a research done on the Indian banks in terms of how much they spend versus their operating income. And Indian banks do not stand a chance. Now, sorry, but that's a reality. Now, for example, like your trading application could go off in the morning for 3 minutes or 5 minutes and nobody cares, right? Let me give you an example about the day I started at HSBC as a COO, my application went off in the middle of a day on a weekend for 37 seconds, and I was sitting in front of a regulator being the CXO and justifying it as well as penalized, right? So that's the reality in the global market. So as a country, when we are moving forward, right, what we really need to look into from the resilience perspective, that how resilient infrastructure that we are building. Yes, we have got a DPI, we have built up 21 billion transactions a month, but that is DPI. But are we really resilient enough in our basic banking infrastructure? That's what the question we need to ask even before we start talking about the cloud or the API or anything else, right? So that's a mindset, that's what we need. And recently when in the GFF as well, like when there was a global collaboration about the different countries, and the one thing which came out very strongly that what we need is the maturity in our financial ecosystem. The reason is because we are the fourth largest economy in the world and we are moving forward, right? So we need that resilience to stand in the global market. Sorry, I'm coming back directly to you, Faisal, again. In terms of, we have discussed about the cloud and the API, and we are talking about the open banking. Now, in the open banking, generally there are different aspects, right? The account aggregation part, the payment initiation part, as well as your credit. Right? So in India, the way account aggregation is, it's mainly the account aggregation. We are still not there into the credit side, right? As well as in terms of the data governance layer at our end is not matured. So how do you see it as evolving over the period of time?
I think it has to be a mix of both the legislative framework as well as regulatory practices. Now, as far as the regulatory practices from IBA and RBI, etc., I think I'm very confident of that because RBI has been traditionally a very, it's not a very hawkish central bank, but at the same time, it's a very conservative and progressive. And, you know, and I've studied this, compared central banks in some of my previous cases, etc. What we are weak at is the recognition that every citizen of this country deserves to be treated fundamentally treated at par in terms of credit availability. Now, that could be, of course, based on his background, income status, etc., etc. So, in terms of the legislative framework, we are a little weak, and I think somebody in Delhi probably are still working on it. I'll give you a simple example. Until 1977 or 78, it was not your right to have a passport. The government of India could deny you. Passport मिलता था मतलब the government of India ने आपके ऊपर favor किया है. Maneka Gandhi challenged that. And due to some ongoing cases that she was having with the Prime Minister of that time, there was a legislative case that was defined in Supreme Court, and the verdict came out, Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, where it was held that every citizen of this country has the right to a passport. Now, uske conditions and frameworks and all and rules and how-tos, etc., you can make that. But nobody can be said that, oh, you don't deserve a passport. Why do you deserve to travel to Hong Kong or what's that, Bangkok these days? So, why do you deserve? Now, it's not the government of India's prerogative to stop. Similarly, we have to put this as a fundamental right that every citizen of this country has the right to be included as part of the larger credit society or the credit framework. They are eligible for credit, for which means that when the open cloud becomes more pervasive, more popular, then we cannot switch off their Aadhaar. Because Aadhaar is like a switch, it's a kill switch. We should not, it should go in the constitution that nobody can be denied an Aadhaar card. Nobody can be denied a PAN card. And once issued, it should not ever be switched off. Because if I switch off your Aadhaar number, then you don't exist in the way that is evolving right now. And those are some of the things that I worry about, people in the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem worry about.
So thank you, Faisal. I think we are towards the time, and I'll take this moment to ask you a very rapid fire sort of, what is the one thing that you see evolving phenomenally as well as a challenge in the country when it comes down to the cloud, API and the open banking? Shanmugul, 10 seconds.
So, evolving is only the technology is evolving. That technology now, the AI is going to play a very, very major role. So in aspect of the transaction, suppose right now he said the million of transactions is happening on the every day, as you said. So how to handle when we can increase the volume of transaction, always the security also is increasing. So now we need to increase the technology. So we need to bring the AI in every part of the open banking or any other transaction, and bring the more and more process into the control, then only we can able to sustain the transaction, and we can achieve one more growth. So the transformation is going to playing a very key role on that.
Thank you, Shanmugul. That is 10x of 10 seconds. Faisal, over to you.
Banking should become more inclusive and for everybody, and not become elitist. The framework that we are building is very inclusive, and I think open banking is in the right direction. Pre-1969, before the government nationalized most banks, it was an elitist concept. And I think we are opening up, and with open cloud, open banking will become very inclusive banking.
Thank you, Faisal. How about you, Deepa?
Yeah, I will still stick to data. I think data will determine how, how we can include inclusive banking and to what level of products the open banking can permeate to. So it will be still, data will be paramount, how we source the data, how we clean the data, how we segregate the data, and most importantly, how we use the data for making multiple decisions and selling the products to the end customer.
Thank you, Deepa. So it's really interesting and to hear your perspective, and it's a pleasure to be here as well. In terms of the open banking in the cloud and API, what we are talking about, that's a regular term in the banking, that's what we are using. And we have been on this journey for well over a decade now. Now we see the kind of maturity in the Indian banks they are moving towards. For obvious reason, because as economy, we are growing exponentially, as well as the kind of services that we offer. And so the way I see in the future, in the open finance, that I'm walking through a street of Mumbai in, say, Dadar or anywhere else, I see a QR code on a house, I can just scan that QR code through my phone, and that will connect me, that will give me the detail about that house, whether it is for sale, and if it is for sale, the bank knows who I am, they should be able to approve my loan straight away, and that should be straight through processing. That's the level of maturity that we are talking about. And let me clarify this. Based on the customer profile, that level of maturity, some of the Indian banks already has it today. So thank you very much, and pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ritesh. Of course, always he brings his contribution, not just in moderating the entire conversation, but also in adding his valuable knowledge to the same. May we request Mr. Sandeep from SPA just once again to join us back, but this time we'd like you to present the token of appreciation from the team's side to all our panelists. For all the ones in the room, if you have enjoyed and learned something new, I think it only deserves a bigger round of applause as we have the top leaders joining in. And thank you to all our panelists for sparing their valuable time on a Monday. I think it's really great to see all of them together. May we please request all of you to step forward, allow us an opportunity to get you all in one frame. As a group photograph as well, we'd just like you to step forward ahead of the table so that we can have you together. As of course our panelists are here gathered for the final group photograph, we also feel that the audience would need a good cup of coffee and tea. So let's break in for 10 minutes, and I request you to join us back. On the other side, we're going to be having quick 3 panel discussions of 25 minutes each. And post those 3 discussions, we're going to be breaking in for lunch. So right now, may we request you, if you still haven't got your cup of coffee or tea, feel free to go outside and bring it back. In the next 10 minutes, we're resuming. Thank you.